which is the Cabinet, the Office of Prime Minister, and Chairman of the National Security Council. I want to begin by re-emphasizing the comment from the government on this matter as it was put out by the relevant minister of the Cabinet, that is the Minister of National Security. Because what in effect we are dealing with, as was said before by spokespersons for the government, is a matter of arm's length police work. And I, as head of the Cabinet, head of the government, which has in recent days been literally identified by influential persons in this country as having some knowledge or involvement in this matter and some agenda in this matter. I've seen influential persons saying that whatever is being contested by the police or by the defendant could not have happened without the involvement of those at the top. And that was pointing not just fingers, but the whole hand at the government as the executive and the Prime Minister as the head of the top. I want to do what I normally do with citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, which is to tell you the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And that is that I, like everybody else in the country who wasn't involved in this matter with the police, became aware of the existence of this matter as a result of your reporting in the media. And that is a statement that I am absolutely certain cannot be truthfully rebutted with any fact coming from any quarter. Because as head of the Cabinet, I can tell you without fear of contradiction that the Cabinet of Trinidad and Tobago had absolutely nothing to do with this matter. And I'll go further to say, notwithstanding what you might hear and fears that might be expressed by persons who claim to be in the know, let the record show that the Cabinet of Trinidad and Tobago is not in the habit of directing the police at any person or agency, and we, the citizens of this country, can go to bed comfortably knowing that police work was only directed by police officers in the police service under the Act. That is what we live in Trinidad and Tobago. And any person who is making allegations contrary to that, I ask you in the media to ask them for the supporting evidence of their position. The first time I knew of the existence of this situation, which the media is reporting now, started last year, September, I think it was, is when this matter was reported in recent days. Of course, as head of the National Security Council, I could tell you that what you already know of my concern and my fears and apprehension with respect to the whole matter of arms, ammunition, permits, location and use of those things in and among and against the population of Trinidad and Tobago. It remains a serious concern for me, and I'm only more concerned now than ever. So, ladies and gentlemen, when you look at it, and I'm speaking here based only on what is in the public domain, because I have no other vantage point other than what has been put in the public domain at this time. And it is clear that there are two prongs to this fork. One is the police, under the Commissioner of Police, whoever is in office, directing and being responsible for normal police work. That's one angle. And the other angle is in doing normal, and I want to introduce this term, ongoing police investigation, issues about the procedures employed by the police. And against those two positions, which should be very clear, there is the situation of who answers for what. And the police, in the face of the law and accusations by defendants, the police are the only people who can and will answer in a court of law for their actions. Not the cabinet, not the prime minister. I'm sorry to disappoint some people, but you would have seen the amount of effort that was put in to draw the cabinet, the prime minister, into this matter. In fact, had I not seen a news item last night, I was in Tobago for a funeral yesterday, and I turned my television on just in time to see Senator Wade Mark, the opposition chief whip in the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago, foaming at his mouth and making statements that are inimical to the interests of Trinidad and Tobago. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, is he in there? Excuse me, I would like to. I was saying, Senator Wade Mark, I just turned on the television on the main news of the day, the 7 o'clock news, and saw this parliamentarian that leads a section of the administration of our country using his office to threaten the well-being of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. He was not content to allow the court and the police to deal with, to clarify, expand on the work of the police. He went as far as to accuse the government of criminal conduct. Now, you could imagine those who make allegations willy-nilly, as they will all the time, having the support of the voice of the leader of the opposition in the parliament, saying, as his colleague Senator Jolene John said the night before, she said, Trinidad and Tobago doesn't have a government. What we have is a rogue terrorist organization. That is a parliamentarian's description of the government of Trinidad and Tobago. And Senator Mark, he went further. He wasn't content to say that the Trinidad and Tobago government is of that nature, but he roped in the Barbados government to say that the government of Trinidad and Tobago and the Barbados government have acted in concert in this way against a citizen of Trinidad and Tobago. Now, defendants can make all kinds of claims in the courthouse. Now, we know that. In any country, especially our country, defendants are free to make any kind of accusation. That does not make it true. That does not make it fact. But that is a matter for the court to adjudicate upon. Senator Mark, last night, claimed that he will do what he always does, which is to take steps to nasty up the name of Trinidad and Tobago. You may recall, under the Manning administration, the country, in going out to purchase by way of contract to hire people to build offshore patrol vessels for us, had a public expression of interest document worldwide to see which government will want to assist or to get involved in supplying us with those military vessels. The process was wide open and people participated, the Italians, the British, the whoever else. And eventually, the evaluation process selected a British company. I think it was Vosper Thornycroft. That company was about to enter into a contract with Trinidad and Tobago. Senator Mark decided that wasn't going to be allowed to happen, and he took steps as an opposition voice to write allegations to the British Serious Fraud Office, making all kinds of allegations against the government of Trinidad and Tobago without a single shred of evidence. But that didn't bother him. Just make allegations against the government, portray the country as a banana republic where the government could do all the kind of things they allege, and that was OPV. Years later, under my stewardship, we took steps to cooperate with the Australian government at a time when we had difficulty getting proper ferries to run between Trinidad and Tobago, and we had no offshore patrol vessels while refugees and criminals were rushing to Trinidad and Tobago undetected. We took steps to fix that. We got the cooperation of the Australian government, and we entered into an arrangement with the government of Australia, which has since borne fruit. We've got the two vessels, the APT James and the Boca Reef. They are now in service, and we got two offshore patrol vessels with a 28-day endurance to work around Trinidad and Tobago's coastline. Senator Mark decided that was not to happen. Without a single shred of evidence, this office holder, this parliamentarian, that opposition party wrote to the Australian opposition. And that was after they wrote to the Attorney General's office in Australia without a shred of evidence to support their damaging allegation against our country, to try to prevent the Australian government from assisting Trinidad and Tobago in obtaining the loan financing to finance those contracts for those 4 vessels. When the Attorney General office in Australia did not fall prey to their machinations, they wrote to the Australian opposition, encouraging the opposition to take political action against the government of Australia on allegations led by the UNC in Trinidad and Tobago, alleging corruption for which there was not a single shred of evidence. I could tell you, Senator Mark is not unknown to me. I moved a motion in the Parliament with respect to taxpayers losing $400 million in that hotel across the street here. It was called the Carlton Savannah at the time. A motion in the Parliament being piloted by me personally. And people had questions to answer because I went to the Parliament with evidence. And what did Senator Mark do? Who's so concerned about corruption that he dreams it and tries to implicate countries against us? He, as Speaker of the House, did the unthinkable. He intervened in the debate. He lied to Parliament saying that he received a document from the Chief Justice, the judiciary, saying that the matter was sub judice and therefore could not go on. And Senator Mark, as Speaker, ended the debate. That happened in our country under the said Senator Wade Mark. He used his authority as the chair in the Parliament to do what speakers are not allowed to do, which is to enter a debate. And to enter the debate, he falsified a statement as having received from the judiciary. It was a shocking thing that day in the Parliament subsequently, when the judiciary had to report that no such intervention or statement or knowledge of the judiciary took place. But he succeeded in ending that motion. That motion never was concluded. The then government that had to answer through his personnel did what they all now specialize in. Make sure that you don't have to answer any allegation against you. That happened in our parliament under the watch of Senator Mark. So last night, when he gets up and says that this piece of police work, which is now a matter dealt with by the court and would still be in the court, because I am advised by the Attorney General today that the state is taking steps to appeal this matter tomorrow morning, asking for an urgent hearing because this matter is so very important to the interests of the population. But that is not a matter for the Prime Minister or for the Cabinet. That's a matter for the Attorney General acting as the state's the state's premier legal officer, acting on behalf of what the police has done or is doing. And he will know where to go with that. That is the courts. But Senator Mark cannot wait for that to play out, cannot respect those procedures, running true to form, telling the population that he will nasty up the country's name again by presenting unfounded allegations to the EU, to the UN, to the OS, and to anybody who would hear, so that they can hear that in Trinidad and Tobago, the government, according to Senator Wade Mark and the UNC voices, the government is involved in managing, damaging situations against citizens, using the police to persecute and to prosecute them. Nothing is further from the truth. But that is an inconvenience to the opposition. Inconvenience. And of course, no respect for our relationship with the government of Barbados. Because all along, you will be hearing that the Prime Minister and my cabinet, we have no role to play in the police service. We agree as a prosecuting entity. Only recently I had to make a statement saying that we don't tell the police who to go after, who to lock up, who to investigate. That decision is made within the police system, with no assistance from the cabinet or the Prime Minister. But that is an inconvenience to Wade Mark and the UNC. So he could go on the 7 o'clock news last night from one of their UNC misinformation centers and say that he wants the Prime Minister to answer with respect to what you have been publishing. My first comment to the media was yesterday, when I said to the media, I too am waiting at an appropriate time and stage to get information. And from where? From the Minister of National Security, who will properly advise me in my capacity as head of national security, and the head of the cabinet. But Senator Mark is calling on me to answer for the police. Members of the media, members of the national community, I want to make it abundantly clear. The Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago in this matter and similar matters and police work on a day-to-day basis is not a matter for the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago. I have nothing to answer for. As a matter of fact, I wait to hear from the police the answers to a lot of what is being said and a lot of what they have to say about their own conduct. If they break the law, there is a way to deal with that. That's what the courts are there for. And when the court rules, if the government doesn't agree, there's the appeal court there for that. So you have to ask yourself, what is the objective of the UNC and other voices who are hell-bent on drawing the cabinet into this matter? If not to end up with a situation where the police service will be tarnished for all times. Some are already saying it's a foregone conclusion that the police is being used by the state to prosecute who. But I can tell you all, there's no truth to that. And to go down that road is providing invaluable assistance to the criminal element. It's like music to their ears, because they know that that is only helping to destroy what little we have left. There's absolutely no basis for it and absolutely no truth in it. Interestingly, I have not spoken to anybody in Barbados because I don't need to. I presume that the AG would talk to his colleague. I haven't read it, I've seen some statement in the paper from the Barbados Attorney General. I haven't even read it, because I know one thing. I know one thing for sure. There's nothing that he could say to the media in Barbados or the media in Trinidad and Tobago that implicates me or the executive in Trinidad and Tobago, contrary to what is being said. I'm also, to let you know, I did tell you a few months ago that during this year, I plan to take a vacation. I have not done so. The best I could have done was to ask for a long weekend in Barbados. So on the 14th of April, I took a decision sometime early at Easter time. I took a decision that I'll take this weekend off and go to Barbados with some friends to meet some friends. The ticket for that trip was purchased on the 14th of April. The decision was taken well before that, long before you were in the news. And as a result of what I've done, I have a ticket in my pocket. I leave here tomorrow morning for Barbados. I'll be in Barbados for the weekend. And I know if I didn't tell you that, all kinds of interpretations have been put out by presidents in Barbados this weekend. Rest assured that my presence in Barbados has nothing to do with this matter, right? It has all to do with maintaining my personal relationship with what I do best with Barbados in Barbados, and I intend to enjoy the weekend on some of the best golf courses in the world. And of course, that might upset some people, but I have no apologies to make, because I'll show you my last medical report if you ask me nicely enough. So from here on in, I have no doubt that there are those who will believe nothing I say. I can't make anybody believe. What I could do is let you know what the facts are, and there's a place for adjudicating on the facts. And that place is in the independent court system of Trinidad and Tobago. That's where this matter is, that's where it belongs. And the other prong is, if there is a citizen or citizens who under the Police Act or any other law have been deemed by the police to be in breach of the law, then the law will take its course without let, without hindrance from the executive of Trinidad and Tobago and any other source of intervention. The law will and must be allowed to take its course. A lot of questions exist with respect to this specific matter. I've said to the media yesterday, I have concerns about every aspect of it. And I will say no more for the moment, because the situation warrants that as Prime Minister, I do not get any further involved in this matter. So if you came here to come and ask me about Brent Thomas and the police and the warrant, I'm not answering you, because I don't know, I don't have any information to add, and there's a place to get that information. I expect that you will put serious questions to the Commissioner of Police. I expect that you'll put questions to the Minister of National Security, where there's a separation of the roles there. Go ahead. We have a live and direct media in Trinidad and Tobago. And I would read what you write. But nobody is drawing me into that. And as for Wade Mark, trying to nasty this country's name again, all I can say to Wade Mark, 3 strikes and you're out, 5 strikes and you'll be ignored. Because the facts will always bear out that Wade Mark, as a member of Parliament, is irresponsible and he poses a danger to the good name of Trinidad and Tobago. And as for the UNC as an organization, I spent 3 terms in the opposition in this country, and the UNC has learned nothing about being in opposition. Because you're in opposition, you could do anything you want to the country. That's the behavior. You're in opposition, you could do whatever you want to the country. Because I will tell you, reading outside of Trinidad and Tobago, in the press outside and so on, reading about a member of Parliament saying this about Trinidad and Tobago, in some quarters, that is proof that the allegations have substance. They would not believe that the member of Parliament who is doing that does not have a shred of evidence to support the allegations. And I could say, as a citizen of this country, to the UNC and Wademark, stop trying to undermine the interests of Trinidad and Tobago. If you stop doing that, you might be viewed as being of some value to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. If you have any questions, I'll take a couple of them now, and that's as much as I want to say to you.
Outside of the UNC and Wademark, there are many citizens who find it incredulous that a matter like this could have occurred where a police was taken from one jurisdiction to another, and on a non-commercial plane, and nobody from the political arm in either England or you, from Trinidad or Barbados.
Well, that should tell you that the political arm is not involved in it. If I was involved in it as head of the political arm in the government, I would have been in the position to answer your questions and the similar questions. In fact, I could see why people would say such an important matter and the government doesn't know. It is because the police is acting so far at arm's length from the executive. Why that aspect of police work? But I could tell you, I've asked similar questions myself, and I have found out that on at least half a dozen occasions, similar kinds of operations have taken place. So it is not the first time. And therefore, if there's some fault in it, we may have discovered, or we could discover that there is a fault, but it's not the first time. And to make it look as if it is something that the government is doing now in the context of this particular investigation is wrong. Not so at all. And it is total police work. The police would never ask the government for clearance to do a warrant. That's in our country. The police has its directions, where to go for advice, and how to proceed against a citizen who they believe there's information to make them a person of interest, or there's evidence to bring about an arrest, or a warrant for a search and so on. That is it in Trinidad and Tobago. Let it be said loud and clear by me, the Prime Minister, and you, the media, that that is a matter for the police. And that is the answer to that question.
Apart from that, Dr. Rowley, between the sovereign Republic of Trinidad and Tobago and Republic of Barbados, has there been any communication like between formally or informally on this matter?
I would say that I will answer that question by saying to you, I think the Attorney General has spoken to that matter. After the court decision, when this matter came up in front of the Attorney General is the quarter that will make that communication. I have not spoken to the government of Barbados because I have kept myself out deliberately. I understand that the Prime Minister of Barbados is also the Minister of National Security. There are departmental responsibilities, and in order to preserve the ability to say to you without fear of contradiction that my office is not involved, and I see no reason to get involved. Right? I'm going to Barbados on the weekend. I'm not sure. I have no plans are already arranged to see the Prime Minister of Barbados. And even if I see her, that's not what I'm going there for, as I told you. And if it comes up, it would come up in the context of informing. I have no role in the matter. In terms of the National Security Agency over there, which, if the Prime Minister is National Security Minister, Minister to Minister, I expect that the ministry here, if it is required, to do so. And of course, if something comes up, whatever that something is, right? If something comes up which requires me to talk to the government of Barbados, I certainly will and I could. But so far, there has been nothing that warrants my intervention or insertion into the process. So the calling on me by the opposition is simply to complicate the issue and to give it the political flavor that they've tasted for that has not borne fruit.
Do you think it has the potential to jeopardize the security arrangement or cooperation that takes place between the two countries?
Not at all. I mean, I think the government of Barbados will see this for what it is. I mean, insofar as Barbados entities have been involved, according to the news, the government of Barbados would want to know that their end acted in the best interpretation. But let me just say something to you. Words have a meaning behind them. We saw in the judgment the use of, and I have not read the judgment. I've been reading snippets of it as they have been presented to the various persons who are commenting. But I saw the word abducted being used. And as a lawmaker in this country of decades, my understanding of the word abducted is that it implies criminal conduct for a benefit. That's the implication of it. So where our police officers are being accused of abducting, as a matter of fact, in the first press reports, I did see the word kidnapping being used, right? Now, those two terms have a meaning to them, which is important. Where you do something knowingly breaking the law for a benefit. Upon investigation, you may find that the police acting as they have acted, again, public reports under the use of warrants and the office of the DPP and so on, you may find that there's a difficulty in proving that the police acted with criminal intent. And that is the difference. One could act in good meaning. Turns out to be wrong, but there was no criminal intent. But once the word abducted or kidnapping is used, it conveys the intent of criminality. And I'm not here trying to be a lawyer because I don't advise myself in law. I'm simply explaining why, if the police are being accused of criminality, criminal conduct, then the appropriate defense would be launched. And if there are people claiming that their constitutional rights have been breached, this is something that the court deals with every day, every time. And of course, we as a people, we have systems in place that should not allow us to be overwhelmed by a development of this nature.
There was a question about whether all the conversation about civilians acquiring firearms and the licensing, the controversy over that, the report of
I don't want. Well, policemen have been over exuberant at traffic stops as well, you know, right? But I don't want to get into any public discourse on that matter, because as you know, as Prime Minister, I would have expressed my concern by having certain preliminary investigations done, which involved, in the end, the Police Service Commission and a lawsuit filed against me. I was in a trial where I was the defendant, and there's a judge's ruling with respect to this whole matter of this troubling, ongoing investigation of the audit of the firearms unit of the police service in Trinidad and Tobago. And as a result of that, I will say no more. I will await the outcome of the investigation by the police commissioner as directed by the judge. Because you see, this issue of firearms, its presence, utilization, lawful or unlawful receipt of privileges in the crime wave that is going on in Trinidad and Tobago, it should be of interest to every citizen. I have made my position very clear from the very beginning that the presence and control of ammunition and arms in this country is a very serious matter. And that is why, where there were concerns, investigations were launched. So I don't want to get into any details of the specific actions of the police in this matter, because I am in this position of an ongoing matter in the court. Because Justice Rampersad has said in the matter with the former Commissioner of Police, he's directed how that matter should proceed by investigation through the police commissioner or the police service commission. And he went further He said if those investigations are not concluded, then his ruling to delay the publication of any report in the Parliament will be firmed up as a permanent order. So that is where I am as Prime Minister. Right? So we are all awaiting the outcome of the audit that is taking place in the police service, where we are concerned at the level of National Security Council about the availability of certain dangerous items in the country, namely arms, ammunition, and explosives. As a matter of fact, if I go to the ruling of the judge, in the face of a request to annul and quash the report that was available, the judge in his ruling said no Prime Minister, no Minister of National Security could have seen what is contained in that report and not act. And I think, if my memory serves me right, that he went on to say to have done so would have been a serious dereliction of duty or worse to that effect. So that is where we are in Trinidad and Tobago, in search of the facts, in search of the comfort that all is well in the state of Trinidad and Tobago with respect to arms, ammunition, and permits to use those things, and it also includes explosives and other prohibited items.
Family Day at Tobago, there were a couple of controversial
Sure.
remarks that were made.
Have we finished? hold that for a minute after show. Let us finish this matter quickly. I don't want to drag this matter on. I think I've said enough. The rest of it is for the lawyers. I'm sure the lawyers will have something to say in the days and weeks ahead. I'm sure the minister will carefully have anything to say if there's anything that he has to say. And I'm sure the Commissioner of Police, as the senior officer, would have a lot to say to you in clarification with respect to this matter.
Have you received a report from the Commissioner of Police that you spoke about yesterday?
I haven't. I have not got that report yet. The minister will have a report, but I'll let you know. If I receive a report from the minister, I am not going waving it around the country to provide aid and succor to those who will misrepresent it. I am about protecting the interests of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And at this juncture, right, the state's effort is at the Office of the Attorney General in speaking to the court about the whole basket of facts, and those are matters for the lawyers. I am not aware. I know that there are procedures in place that have to be followed in order to move people around the region, right? And there are procedures, as I mentioned to you earlier on, which were being followed by the Trinidad and Tobago Police, and those procedures are going to be examined by the court. Let us wait on the court doing that, because I'm sure the Attorney General, in putting the police side of the story to the court in an appeal, those are the kinds of things that would come up there. So please don't invite me to play lawyer, right? Yes.
Dr. Rowley, just around your footsteps, just like you said, when a bit, tomorrow make it a week since we had a series of bomb scares across the country. Any updates when it comes to the investigation?
A little bit. The police cyber people are working. They've got, as you know, you would know, the finding these sources are not the easiest things. You have to search deeply, because persons who would have carried out that kind of arrangement with such precision, there are ways of covering your tracks. So the uncovering of the tracks would not be the easiest thing, but we are pursuing the footprints where they exist.
And, just during the, I think Sean was going to raise that question, the PNM's Family Day on Sunday, the opposition leaders now issued a reaction protocol as what she described as defamatory statements. Your response?
Well, opposition by pre-action protocol is not new to us. Insofar as innocence is raised, or accusations are made, the way to deal with that is with the lawyers. I don't advise myself in law, and if I'm accused of breaking the law, then more than ever, my lawyers would be involved.
There are actually two things that were said at the family day. Linking the bomb scare to the opposition, and the other thing about roping in the opposition leader to the Whitney pundits' controversial remarks about urban youth.
That,
So
that,
I just wanted to disaggregate the two in case they came across as one, you know. So the reaction, if you
well,
anything to
no, if I receive a pre-action protocol from any person, the way it's going to be dealt with is to pass it to my lawyer, who will advise me as to the rectitude of my cause. With respect to, what's the other one about?
So the first one was the pundit's remarks that you had wrote in your opposition leader, kind of to that, and then the second was the saying, well, asking if it was a coincidence that on the day of a no confidence motion against the Honourable Minister of National Security that you had these threats, kind of insinuating.
I don't think that in a country where there's freedom of thought and freedom of expression without breaking the law, I didn't think that that was so far-fetched. I mean, one has to think. We don't normally get them coming together like that. It was a one-off situation as far as I know. So the question of reflecting as to whether they connected or not, to me, is a reasonable thought. It might be inconvenient for some people. But let me just remind you all, in case you all, we have a great, I saw comments being made about me reflecting that thought. There's a family in Santa Cruz who one Christmas week, the wife came into town to do some shopping specifically for her husband. She died in a shoot-up on Charlotte Street. You all remember that? You remember that? Good. And you remember what the miscreants who are alleged to have been involved in that were about? It was indiscriminate shooting in a public place in support of a thought that that could make the Christmas look a certain way and to make the government look a certain way. There are people in this country who will do things to hurt this country. If in so doing, matters not how horrendous it is, if that will advance their agendas. And you had better believe that.
There was related to some of these allegations, there was a home invasion in your constituency in Victoria Gardens today.
Well, as I said at the CARICOM meeting the other day, criminals, as we have them here in Trinidad and Tobago, they have business models. Unfortunately, some people saying that the criminals are attacking people of a certain race and a certain, but the criminal element is not an accidental development in this country. They have business models. And like kidnapping was a business model until the anti-kidnapping squad literally rooted it out and knocked wood, kidnapping has not been what it was at one time. Holding up cash in transit is a criminal business model. Going to a business place and forcing someone to open a vault, taking them back to the place, that's another model. Thinking that somebody home has cash in their house and go there and force your way in, that's a business model. Those are the modus operandi of the criminal element. And nobody, none of us is immune to it. The criminals are not weak siblings learning to crawl. These are well thought out, predetermined actions of people who determine to use crime for profit. And unless we all close ranks against them, they will succeed in going between us and making us fight against ourselves while they profit in the process. And that is what this country is being called upon to do. Close ranks against the criminals, starting in the home. Because very many people in homes in this country know who the criminals are and know what they are up to. And if you keep secrets for them, they need that. And if there are police officers in the ranks of the police service who create opportunities for them to evade the law, they need that. And of course, the entire administration of the country, from parent to the highest point, office of prime minister, human beings, susceptible to all kinds of failures. And we are saying we don't want those failures. We have to identify those failures. But in this case, there has been no failure at the office of the prime minister or the cabinet. So when there's none, let us not pretend that there is. But where there are and being exploited by the criminals, we have to call a spade. And the population, you saw in the United States, was it yesterday or the day before, where the guy who was deported a few times and he wiped out a family. And the police caught him close to where he committed the crime. They were down on the Mexican border, thousands of police officers looking for him, trying to go to Mexico. He was close to this. And you know how the police solved that case? Somebody who knew something told the police that valuable something, and without it, they might have been looking at the Mexican border all now, thinking that he had gone back to Mexico. If you know something about criminal intent or criminal conduct, help the country to survive the criminal onslaught by alerting the police service. And it will do none of us any good to present the police service as a useless batch of criminals serving themselves. The vast majority of our police officers are there trying to stand in the breach between us and the criminal element. And they need support. Not in any wrongdoing. They need support in carrying out their lawful duties. Not the least of which is information. The police acts largely on information received. I did see a nuance of the judgment on the question of whether the information was valuable enough. We all have a job to do. Thank you all very much, and I'll see you again sometime soon.
TTT News, first at 6:30 p.m. TTT News, committed, accurate, relevant.
It's blue! Baby!
Honestly, I wish I did, but I don't. Look, if we turn back, I'm sure we can make it back to the hospital in an hour.
An hour? Baby, we don't have that. His temperature is so hot. My baby has been crying non-stop for over an hour now. For God's sake, his temperature is so high. He needs somebody to attend to him.
I'm sorry I couldn't be here for the wedding, but I had a store to run in our church harvest.
Charlie did tell me about it.
But everything came off quite well, I hear.
Everything come off good.
I have to go now. I must find Charlie.
Sorry. It's okay, you're doing just fine, okay? Let's go.
Your idea for the auction was a very good one.
And he was the springer.
You're good for them. And you're good for me too. You realize what has happened in the past weeks, don't you? I've fallen in love with you.
Welcome back inside the Now Morning Show. I hope that you're having a great morning so far. We're heading back across to Tobago, well, to have conversations about it at least. I want to welcome the president of the 2nd Division Fire Services Association of Trinidad and Tobago, Mr. Leo Ramkisoon. Good morning to you, sir.
Pleasant morning to you, Ruckus, and pleasant morning to Trinidad and Tobago.
All right, so I understand that we've been seeing the reports about the situations in Trinidad where we have a shortage of you have a shortage of trucks, you have a shortage of equipment, you have a shortage of ladders. We've been hearing about all those things. What's going on in Tobago?
Well, it's very similar. The same shortages are occurring. We have trucks that are very, very defective to the point that officers aren't able to man the trucks in, for example, Scarborough Station, so that that places, of course, the public at a degree of risk, and it places a degree of frustration and mental anguish on the officers not being able to respond in the optimal way to the needs of the public. That aside from that, we have the conditions of the various stations, and notwithstanding even the administrative offices in Tobago, they also are subject to some very, very poor conditions as well. So as the association, we are advocating for appliances and equipment, repairs to the appliances to be made urgently so that officers could fulfill the mandate of responding to the public, as well as addressing the very, very concerning health and safety concerns at the various facilities in Tobago, in all the stations in Tobago.
All right. I want to break down a little bit so I can get some clarity as to what we're dealing with. Who exactly is responsible for maintaining the trucks and the equipment and all that stuff by the fire service?
Well, ultimately, the employer is responsible, and the chief fire officer would be representative of the employer. So the chief fire officer is responsible for maintaining vehicles. Of course, he would have officers under his charge that would be more specifically responsible for vehicles. For example, the brigade engineer in the fire service would be responsible, and that engineering department would be responsible for repairing vehicles. But you also have the procurement section and other sections that have a role because they would have to acquire parts and so on. The problem in many instances is that the administration, as we have unearthed from them, is that they are unable in many instances to attain the parts, and that's because of funds and so on, allocations and other problems, shipping problems and so on, so that it would have prevented the timely repairs to trucks and all of that. I think that it is important that we, as the representative of fire officers, under their instructions, ensure that the public is made aware of the situation so that we encourage as much safe practices as possible in terms of how you manage your surroundings in this bushfire season and so on. And let me just take this opportunity to wish all firefighters out there happy International Firefighters Day today. That's important.
That's today?
May the 4th be with you. Yeah, that's today.
May the 4th be with you as well. All right, so this sounds to me like, all right, we have a challenge of funding, yes, is what you're saying. So we have a lack of funding and a lack of being able to acquire the parts necessary to do the maintenance. Is that where the challenge lies?
So I could only relay what the employer has relayed to me. We are not the Fire Service Association. We represent the firefighters who actually undertake firefighting. We are not representative of the management of the fire service. So the fire service management will be best placed to explain what are exactly the shortcomings, so that as far as we understand when we speak to them is that the issue is parts and equipment, attaining of those parts and equipment and so on. They are long in coming and they weren't able. One thing I want to highlight though is that it was suggested, let me put it that way, by the chief fire officer